It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Friday. This is going to be a quick one by Feedback Friday standards because I'm waiting for the flooring guy to arrive. He's late, so I'm doing this now. The patrons are getting more behind the scenes stuff. Help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com, Leanna K. I made this one open to everyone, so if you want to go over to my Patreon channel, see what the patrons get, the slice of life stuff, you can check it out. There's one more I'm gonna add at some point because it's crazy. But let's get into it because I don't know when they're gonna arrive. This video will end abruptly. You'll hear the dog bark. I'll go, gotta go, and that'll be the end. But the number one question of the week was on the Wednesday video, and people asked me what a game for women looks like. And a lot of people rightly said women are not a monolith, but men are not a monolith either. And it's undeniable, speaking to game developers, that AAA games are currently made predominantly for men because men are primarily the player base. Now that means, for instance, that a publisher will not let certain game teams put a female playable character in. They don't think that those particular games, and I will not say which ones they are because it was not, I'm not sure if this is something that was told to me to share publicly, but the publishers will not let female playable characters in many games for men, not because of hardcore gamers who really don't care. It's the casual markets that are more, the casual players that are more gender typical, that, you know, female games. The Sims is an example of a game, you know how I feel about The Sims, that it has more social elements. You can customize your characters more. There's men and women. It's non-violent, though I disagree with that, but that's the general thing. In Japan, as one commenter pointed out, there are lots of games for women, and they involve, you know, animals and fashion and things like that. They're basically more female wish fulfillment. So it's like a Gem and the Holograms cartoon. Glamour and glitter, fashion and fame. Like that's basically it. Gem and the Holograms was one of the few girl shows I could stand when I was a kid. So I suspect a game for women would be more like Gem. Now, that's different than a game made predominantly for men that is female friendly. And like I said, I think that's the way the market, the market would go. It is true. I mean, in Japan, because they make more games for women, they have a better idea of what these games look like. Games like the Facebook games, and a lot of games like Candy Crush and Pet Rescue Saga and things like that. I play a game called Homescapes that's on my iPad. It helps me go to sleep. But it's like customizing a mansion, like you fix it up and do things like that. Women prefer hidden object games, Match 3, RPG is up there. I have a chart in one of my university lectures that shows the different how many women versus how many men as a percentage of the audience play different types of games. And Match 3 and Hidden Object Puzzle are definitely way higher up there for women than Tactical Shooter was near the bottom, which really surprised me because I love tactical shooters, but not gender typical. And sports games are way down at the bottom, which surprised me as well because there are a lot of, I guess it's one of those things that women may watch sports, but they won't play a game about sports. It's a different way of engaging with the subject. I want to say visual novels, like walking novels, have a greater female appeal, but I'm not sure about that one. But there are certain genres, and like for instance, women prefer in combat to use melee weapons, so swords and axes over guns. Women prefer that. Color doesn't really make a difference, apparently, according to research. But yeah, it's basically just because a game has a female protagonist doesn't mean it's for women. But a lot of games have male protagonists because the publisher won't let the team put a female character in because casuals do that. I don't want to play as a girl thing. It's not gamers. Like, that's the problem. It's not the core market. Game companies aren't about, well, we're gonna make a game. It's like I said, we're gonna make a game that this core absolutely loves and everybody else can find it. They make games that appeal to everyone and they end up bland. But it's interesting because you may notice that there are more protagonists of color popping up in games now. Someone on Twitter sent me a link to a study that actually showed that something like 73% of black men play console games. So, there's an example of a demographic that has become a significant part of the market, significant enough that people are making games that I won't say are for them, but they're more careful to include. Or you could say for them. I mean, certain elements of Grand Theft Auto, I think, certainly speak to the urban experience, if not, the black experience, because there is no single black experience. But that begs the question: why aren't there more black men making games? It's a big question. The number of black people in game design, I can think of 3 that I know personally, and one is an artist. One's a producer, one's a level designer. So if that many, African American, I don't like that term because we have black people up here and they're not from Africa, but black men play games a lot. Why aren't they making games? I don't know. I've not looked into that, but it would be an interesting thing to, it's an interesting thing to research because we know some of the reasons that women drop computers. We know some of the reasons that women don't go into computing fields or game design fields, but those probably aren't the same barriers based on race. And I'm very curious as to why, because that's a huge gap in terms of interest versus making it a career, and I'd be very curious as to why. So this is an example of how people providing me with information takes me into a new realm of inquiry. I'd love to partner with a researcher at some point and do some studies on this stuff because I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting so tired. I mean, the what's his name, Professor Ferguson. I forget his first name now. But he does a lot of great stuff. I'd follow him on Twitter if I were you, about how bad the methodology in some of these studies about games. And I mean, it's so bad that I can look at it and go, well, that's a problem and that's a problem. And if I can do it, I'm a researcher for documentary purposes, but I'm not a statistician. And even I look at that and go, well, that's not a representative sample. And this is where we get into a lot of the problems. So interesting stuff. I'm going to wrap before I get interrupted. I can't believe they're this late. But that sort of hopefully answers your question. If you're like, well, she didn't really answer the question. I know a lot of you love to say that, but the truth is, in the West, we really don't know because outside of mobile games, no one's really tried to make an action game for women. I suspect it would look something like a Marvel movie because women go to those things in droves. But I think it's worth experimenting about. Western tastes and Japanese tastes are not the same. Asian markets in general, female protagonists are seen as, like, for all genders. They have the tradition of female protagonists, partially because their mythic structure and their historical fantasy has female protagonists for various reasons. They have a different narrative tradition. They love their female protagonists. That's why Disney princesses are so huge over there. Frozen was the movie Frozen, let it go, let it go. That's been that's up there in like the top 5, I forget, but the top 5 movies are things like Princess Mononoke. Um and okay, Princess Mononoke wasn't the main character, but there were very strong women and things like Spirited Away and Kiki's Delivery Service and all. Female leads for mass audiences. It's very different. So we really can't judge what a Western game for women would look like based on Japanese standards because they don't have the stigma surrounding men not wanting to see a movie about starring a woman. When you think about it, that hang up in the West is very strange. And I know you guys don't share it, which is what makes this difficult. Like, if I described a game for women, a lot of the women who watch this channel, all, 9% of you, hello, I love you, you'd be like, well, that doesn't sound very appealing to me. Agreed. Whereas if, I described what a game for men, a lot of you are probably, when I told you that game publishers won't let their dev teams make something female, there was probably a lot of what? That wouldn't bother me. Again, it's because games aren't made for or marketed to gamers. They're made for larger audiences because now they have to sell gazillions and gajillions and gajillions of copies. Somebody mentioned Overwatch as a very female-friendly game. That is true. The character designs are usually the things with visual cues. In my college lecture on gender, I talk about the sort of cues that in marketing that men and women get in terms of, oh, this is for me or this is not for me. And that's really more the trouble in the West, I believe, though I cannot prove it. This is 100% just my opinion. It's more game marketing than the actual content of the games. But something like a BioWare game, Mass Effect, where before it took a crap with Andromeda, something like only 18% of players played as the female Shepard. So things like that, being able to play as a woman appeals to women. Being able to customize your outfits appeals to women. Social elements, RPG stuff, and women are gender typical women. You guys know I love my Doom. But yeah, I think that it's more the marketing of things. It's where games are marketed. They tend to be marketed on channels with predominantly male demographics because the assumption is that men play games. So women don't know what's out there. There are also little marketing tricks. The movie Brokeback Mountain, movie about 2 cowboys, 2 male leads, should be for men. The company knew it was a gay romance, and so they made the poster look more like a poster for a romance movie. Emphasis on faces, stuff like that, less like an action film, so it didn't confuse audiences and it attracted the right demographic. And Loki's barking, so I have to cut this short. I apologize, but my attempt to answer your question, very chaotic circumstances. Thank you so much for your comments. See you guys on Monday. Hopefully, I don't know what this weekend is going to bring. Thanks for watching.